really what we're interested in is how are you using AI? Because AI is a disparate set of technologies. It's an umbrella term. There's so many different kind of AIs, as Adji went through in good detail. We really want to get domain specific now and talk about AI for CX. So a great way of doing that is to have a panel of great people and great brands who can talk about the usage of AI to solve some of their problems relating to CX. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, and I'll go to you first, please. And just a bit about yourself and your role and where you come from, and we'll roll on.
No worries. Hi, I'm Cat Hanys. I'm from Eurotunnel LeShuttle. I'm currently head of research and insights for the passenger and freight division. My background's actually CRM, data marketing. I kind of acquired the insights piece by accident during COVID. The research and insights person left, so I did it off the side of my desk for a bit. Developed a bit of a passion for it, managed to eventually elbow out the CRM, and now I just look after research and insights. So we're growing as a department, and that's why we're here, really, because we're kind of getting a bit more investment into this area, which is really good.
Awesome, and thank you so much for joining us. And James?
Yeah, my name's James McGhee. I work for FootAsylum. I'm the Director of Customer Experience there, so I'm definitely in the conversation of who works for the coolest company. I will argue that with anybody. So I'm Director of Customer Experience, so I have all of the sort of post-purchase stuff, contact centre, and that includes customer feedback, sentiment analysis, and I'm also in charge of conversion improvements in our stores, so taking the insights that we learn from that and applying that so that we can sell more stuff to more people.
Thank you and welcome, James.
Does that sound? We are better than that.
Thank you, James.
Hi, I'm Steve. I work for HelloFresh. Our office is just a little bit that way. I'm the Associate Director of Voice of the Customer. Been with the company for a little over 7 years, and with Chattermill for, I guess the company's been with Chattermill for a bit longer than that, actually. So we collect a lot of feedback about our individual recipes, about the experience online and also at home, and so we pull that together for our markets and also a lot of our central stakeholders, and help them try to improve primarily the physical product in the case of our team, but we also work a little bit on the digital product side as well.
Thank you, Steve. And Abdul?
Reintroduce?
Do it again, yeah, do it again.
All right.
We love to hear it.
So, my name is Abdul Khaled. Job title's still the same from half an hour ago.
Okay,
yeah. I mean, I had a
going
few
well?
offers in the break, but
excellent.
still here.
That's good. That's why you do this. This is great. Thank you so much to our panel. So the first question I think I wanted to get straight into, actually before I do that, I'll just say that obviously thank you again, Kat, for joining, because you're as you mentioned, you're doing something new or planning to do something new in your organisation. And then as you heard, James, you've been doing this obviously for a long time personally with Chattermill for about 4 years or so. We were talking about, Steve, you're saying 7 or 8 years. We've been working with HelloFresh and Abdul. I think it's about 4 years or so that we've been able to work with you and with Eon Next. So the good thing here is we've got a range of different perspectives on this topic, you know, and if you're coming into this for the first time, hopefully you're going to hear different opinions, and if you're halfway through and trying to defend what you're doing, you might hear some great stories as well. And if you're looking for your next set of ambitious plans, then you might hear some advice on that as well. So actually, on that note, I'll come to you, James, first, sort of in the middle of this, in the sense of like your time with Chattermill and CX, and just ask you to talk maybe about an example of how we can see AI as domain-specific usage within CX. Like, what is that even? You know, how is AI helping at all, really? And you know, in your, and maybe a story about how you've used AI for CX.
Okay, so I joined FootAsylum from AO.com, who are like customer obsessed. So I joined a business that wasn't customer obsessed. It understood the importance of them, but that sort of post-purchase bit fell by the wayside a little. At AO, I had an army of people that would just scour feedback and negativity and ring those people and make them happy and all of that. And then I got to FootAsylum, and it was like me and a few others, and you know, it's almost impossible. So initially, the adoption was to be able to get that all in one place, and to be able to get really quick insights for me, really, because I was used to that. It was the best way of working. Selfishly, you know, I was spending a lot of money on something that the rest of the business wasn't going to be using. It was me, and then I was going and trying to influence people with it. But a couple of peaks ago, I won't ask for a show of hands, but we've all hated couriers at some point, haven't we? Like, we don't own our final mile, and that is our like key thing. So if you took a pair of trainers that somebody saved up to buy and are collecting over a wall and they get wet and everything else, we don't own that. And Royal Mail struck a couple of years ago, and our main courier tried to pick up some of the slack for that, but obviously didn't want to admit that they were having troubles in doing so, because we hadn't caused it, and they didn't want to fall out with us and other clients. So we're sort of we were saying our contact centre's lighting up. My head of contact centre's ringing me every day going, I don't know what I'm going to do here, I might quit, but for now I'll try. But it was lit up, it was horrible, and we had delivery data that was backing up the fact that things weren't getting delivered. We were getting reports back that I didn't really trust. But what we had implemented was that all of our tickets, all of our inbound queries went through Chattermill also. So on top of Trustpilot data, App Store data, our service tickets did, and that just built a picture that this one particular company were killing us. Really badly. They were killing our reputation. Our Trustpilot score was going down, and that is, that's the incumbent in the space. That's where people look before they buy from you. And I was able to sit down with some very senior people there and our account managers and show them very easily the impact that they were having on our business, the fact that their business was benefiting from it because they were cherry picking who to review, successful deliveries, etc. Their Trustpilot scores going up, ours is going down, and we pay to acquire those customers. And it changed the relationship with them forever. It certainly has put us in the driving seat as to what we want to do with them. We can feed that back to them at any time, and in fact they ask on sort of regular occasions, at least twice a year, for a comprehensive view of what our customers are saying about them, and they use that as as an indicator for how they're doing. Because our customers are passionate and will give us feedback. You should probably approach them. I'll tell you it is. You should probably approach them as a customer because they're really interested in that information all the time. So that helped us massively.
I love that, James. Thank you very much. And just while I sort of say this as well, if Chattermill people keep an eye on the audience as well. If you have a question at any point during, you can just raise your hand and we'll let you interject. Because if something comes to you, hear something from James or Kat or Abdul or Steve, and you just want to get a question, please do raise your hand. You don't have to wait till the end, but I will come to questions at the end as well. Thank you for that, James. That's awesome. I'm just going to go back to you then, Kat, if you don't mind. You introduce yourself as Kat, didn't you? I was going to say Catherine, but Kat. So, Kat, you're kind of at the point now where I guess you may use some form of AI for CX already, or you may not use anything.
I wish.
You wish. Okay, this is great. So talk to us about
I use pivot
wish
tables.
Stage. Right, yeah.
Well, we have thousands of lines of data every month, every week in the summer. From our post-travel survey. That's the biggest source of information that we have on our customers. So essentially, I don't know if anyone's travelled with us. If you have, you will have received a survey. After your return journey, you get this quite a long questionnaire. But the biggest things that we take from it are NPS and the reason for NPS. We then get all of that data. It's incredibly high-tech. We put it into Excel. We use pivot tables and conditional formatting. And we churn out some quite high-level data with some, basically highlighter pens. So I at this point, as I said, I took over this function a few years ago, but it's really built as a function within the business over the last 12 months. So, I've got to the point where we really need to do something else, because what we can't do is, I'm really impressed with my team. I think we do a great job with what we've got. But what we can't do is things like you said, like when you're talking about the noise in the contact centre, if you've travelled with us, hopefully this hasn't happened to you, but if you've spent 6 hours on the M20 in 40-degree heat with 2 toddlers in the car, it doesn't take a genius to say that you're going to give us a low score. But what we found out, this is just an example, one small thing that I found out recently is that Flexi Plus customers, which is our equivalent of first class basically, they go through the barrier to get to the Flexi Plus lounge, to keep out the riffraff. And when they get to the barrier, the AMPR is supposed to make the thing go up and they go in and have a lovely experience. Well, the AMPR doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for 3 years. And nobody in commercial knew that. Operations knew, and they were printing a code on their hanger, and they had to put the code in. But no customer knew to do that. And I just happened to notice a comment saying from a FlexiPlus customer who's paid, 800 quid or something for this crossing, and we can't even get the barrier to work. Now, that might have shifted their NPS score by 1 or 2, but that has affected our overall score almost as much as the person who spent 6 hours on the M20. So it's that stuff. We need to stop delays, but we also need to fix the barrier and, make sure the sandwiches are labelled right. It's all of that stuff that we need to get right.
I love that because, again, just in the difference between your introductions, the before and after effect, I guess, as a general point, it's still about productivity, it's still about scalability, but it's also the example you touched on from Abdul, it's also about finding those more nuanced things which you managed to find, and then you managed to...
But what else are we missing?
But what else are you missing?
Yeah.
Exactly, and then you start worrying about it.
Yeah.
I love that, great. Thank you, Kat. I was going to come to you next, Steve, because I think at another end of the scale, we've got more than one use case, should we say, going on in HelloFresh. I think you have, I think we recorded there are dozens, maybe 10s, 20s, 30s of use cases. You also described, I think you said you may have the highest number of theme structures, the record for the highest number of theme structures in Chattermill usage. And a theme structure for the audience is basically, maybe you could tell us, Steve, what theme structure is and how it's relevant to use cases, and maybe a bit about your journey 8 years in to AI for CX.
Yeah, sure. So I guess many of you know what a theme structure is and how to use it, but for those of you who don't, it's a collection of topics that you've kind of defined in advance together with Chattermill to figure out what are the main things that people are talking about in your feedback. So it's very much based on what's in the feedback, and then tailored a little bit for what you want to get out of it and how you want to organize the data downstream so that it's maybe more, maybe other teams are more amenable to using it because of the way you organized it. Quite a few years in now, I think the first and primary use case for us was understanding how customers enjoyed specific recipes. So when you get HelloFresh, you receive a shipment with ingredients and recipes, and you cook meals for your family at home. And so the culinary teams really, from the very beginning, have always relied on that feedback about the individual recipes to figure out if they need to change a recipe, or maybe they've missed the mark and they need to go another direction, all towards trying to develop a pool of recipes that customers will enjoy. And originally it just became kind of too much text feedback to comprehend, kind of overwhelming. So there was kind of the work aid perspective of that, of making that achievable on a regular basis, to apply that feedback in an appropriate way. And then over years we added things like NPS feedback. We're a subscription-based business for customers, so also feedback when people cancel or when they pause their subscription. And then bringing also in some external sources, which I guess you mentioned, James, things like Trustpilot, App Store, et cetera. Social media, et cetera. So in some cases, because the context of those is a little different, we use different theme structures. And in some cases, we have things that are very specific for certain teams. Like, for example, we have one theme structure that's really, really specifically for the people who buy ingredients and do the quality assurance for the ingredients that go in the boxes. So it's, it's built on some of our other ones, but really with a focus on how does this work for somebody who's purchasing carrots. I think somebody mentioned carrots earlier. So literally it's about carrots. That's
great.
It's a journey.
Thank you, Steve. That's great. And just before I ask you to pass on, basically, obviously the length of time that you've been involved in this, we've got on the board behind the transformative power. But can you remember a before and after? Was it transformational? Was it in the DNA of HelloFresh to begin with? Were you always customer centric? Were you always hungry for this kind of insight and open to this type of technology, or can you remember a transformation?
I think the company was always open to it. It doesn't necessarily mean that every minute of every day we find CX bliss wherever we turn. It's still a challenge, but I think that original core use case around the recipe feedback has meant that the company has always seen value in understanding and using feedback. There's just so much value in it. It's right at our fingertips. So
yeah, love that. Thank you very much. Abdul, would you maybe, because I think you are very passionate about, you don't even allow us to speak about it in any other terms than transformative, actually, I think, the way you see it. Again, sort of, you've shared some anecdotes, but just again, casting your mind back to where is the inflection point where you could say this is beginning to be transformative versus useful, interesting, valuable?
Yeah, I mean, I won't spend too much on it because I think we touched on quite a bit earlier, but I think it's the business being customer experience led. And I think I mentioned sort of a throwaway comment earlier on, but I'll just expand on it now. We've seen every industry has a different context and a different journey. In our industry, we've seen the technology is no longer the differentiator because I didn't actually know that my friends and colleagues were here before, but we have friends from Octopus and Kraken over here. So to be generous to my Kraken friend over there, Kraken now own or power, I think nearly 50% of the UK market or households. So they're killing it from a technology perspective, which means we can't play in that game. So we've got to find something different. And that's where the customer experience layer becomes the USP for us. Because you have a choice in that scenario. You could go toe to toe with a beast, which you probably, and why would you? If they're doing something great, right? Why would you? So we're powered by Kraken as well. So we have that sort of underlying technology layer. And so customer experience is our transformative power. It's how do we get in front of the customers? How do we invest our time and effort into that space? And then leverage, third parties, outsourced partners to then power some of the other stuff. So again, every industry has a different journey and a different context. But in our industry, I think we felt that's where we're going to make our play. Every business wants to stand for something. And I think we're really coming into our own when it comes to standing for customer experience. Got a few awards for it, public recognition for it. And I think that then builds the momentum. And I don't say this lightly because I'm at Chattermill event, but every time I go and do some of these events and talk about Chattermill quite regularly, because it's that foundational enabler to then start that transformative journey. You need something that enables you to get there. I think that the fellow panelists have talked about some of the impact. It's that those proof points that then allow you to transform strategy, momentum within the business. The scores that I mentioned earlier, these are positive scores, whether it's ratings or Trustpilot, the more that's something you can shout about and stand for. So, yeah.
I love that. That's great. I love the industry respect as well. There was a lot of industry respect there, but in a really, really actually powerful way, because I'd never thought about it like that. That you must have been a conscious decision as Eon Next to say, that's not going to be our USP. So something has to be. You're obviously in an industry where there's obviously a lot of similarity in principle between what you offer, and that was a very conscious, strategic decision as an organisation.
Yeah, selfish
decision.
As sort of head of CX, that was the way.
This is the centre.
This is the way we're going to steer the business now.
but it's a powerful statement, because I guess you have to be different in some respects, and technology, as you said, is a huge enabler of differentiation and innovation. And obviously, you've adopted some of that technology in between the two of you as sort of the giants of the industry. But you made a conscious decision that it would be transformative. Yeah. It was like it will be. It's going to have to be, sort of thing.
It was stripping back to why we exist, and what the core ethos was to be customer centric, was to be customer first. Otherwise, I mean, we joke about this all the time. When we went from Eon to Eon Next. The whole idea was to be different. Otherwise, you just added another piece of the logo or something onto the logo. You might as well just stayed Eon and saved a lot of money. But that was the conscious decision to be different, to be customer centric. And it's just, these are words that are easy to say and it looks good on a mission statement. But then the reality is, how do you actually make it come alive? And I think this is obviously everything we discussed for the past 45 minutes or so. It is examples of how you take that vision and then make it a reality.
Yeah, I love that, because actually come back to, you gave an example of individual customers' voice being presented to the CEO, and Kat, you kind of used a sort of the VIP customer scenario to say, look at the quantified impact of that versus versus everything else that's going along. Do you find those conversations are easy to have in your senior leadership role and with other senior leaders in the business? Is it sort of as natural to be customer centric as a differentiator?
Yeah, I mean, within my business, this has been actually a relatively easy thing to kind of encourage people to get on board with.
Right.
We are helped by the fact that our CEO is relatively new to the business. He's a couple of years in, but he's a French chap. He has an American. He's been spent most of his career in America, so he's quite tech forward for Folkestone. Let's say that. So he's he's really super keen on all this, and we are generally very customer centric, but what we focus on, I think, is customer feedback. And what I want to do is it's quite a nuanced difference, but it's moving away from feedback to experience. So not just, as I said before, the barrier doesn't work or whatever, but how does that affect your whole experience? And also, something we can't do, but hopefully an AI tool can, is tell us how that links for different customers. So, we have all these data points. We have feedback from customers at the point at which they book, for example. And one of the things we ask them at the point at which they book is, why did you book with us? And it could be speed, it could be value for money, it could be whatever. But then once you come back, what's their feedback telling us by those categories on the way back? So do we approach them differently depending on the experience they've had versus what they said they wanted from us? And I mean, that's impossible with highlighters. We need something better to make that happen,
You've exhausted the highlighter technology.
Completely.
I love that because actually, and James might ask you to answer a question on this, following up to Kat actually, is that what you said there is the nuanced difference as you see it, Kat, between feedback and experience. James, you described your kind of journey into FootAsylum as you're already passionate about this subject area. You came in, sounded like you had less people around you to support what you do, and you used technology to help that. What do you make of that point that Kat made about the difference between feedback and experience, like looking at the experience as a joined up thing, I guess, versus being more reactive? Is that what you meant, Kat? Maybe you could answer back as well. But,
Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's one thing to kind of analyse different lines of feedback, but it's quite another thing to work out how that actually affects the customer's sort of feeling towards you, rather than just will they come back, but will they recommend you? Do they think it's a great experience? Are they only choosing you because you're the only option? That's what I mean, really.
No, nice. And James, what's your experience of that definition that Kat just gave?
So I was going to say that I would change the word experience for sentiment. I think an easy sell in my business was I can get as many 5-star Trustpilot reviews as you want, and it might say the contact centre really fixed me and it was great, but everything else was awful. Right. And we would miss the awful bit. Right. So that was the easy way of sort of selling it in the business. The other bit is a similar sort of situation in both of my last two roles, is that we were the challenger in the market and you have to try and differentiate yourself somehow. And I was brought up on the fact that customer experience would not, by the way, not since I was little. I mean, sort of professionally.
That was profound.
Like my dad wasn't asked, sort of professionally brought up on the fact that was our differentiator. Taught about the Zappos story and the fact that we would be successful because we were up against Currys, and now I'm up against JD Sports, and 0.5% of their business fundamentally changes ours. So to the sort of discussion around how do you sell that internally that you were asking before. If you get things right for your customer and you can make them your destination of choice, you are fundamentally changing your business by getting 0.1 to 0.5% of one of these huge monolith businesses. So that's where I've seen the difference. Certainly, the rapid growth that we had at AO, we've had huge growth at FootAsylum, has come because we care. We sweat that small stuff. We care about that. I've always considered it the place where we'll win is not. It's certainly not product in the industries that I've worked in. It's certainly not availability. Availability is fairly even across those industries. It's about how you make those customers feel and how you understand their feelings about it that will win. So that sentiment piece was the biggest bit, rather than trying to build out experiences. It's if customers hate carriers because they don't tell you when you're going to be in, how can you influence that journey so that the sentiment changes and pivots to a positive one. And I think we've learned a lot more out of those smaller bits than the sort of big parts. Like, I don't assess whether customers like our website or not. We've got a great e-commerce team, and the results are in the pound notes. Really, they'll be adjusted by that. But I do care if the communication's not clear, because that's what will stop you spending again. And we're a huge repeat custom driver. It's almost impossible to quantify, but it's proving gravity works. I would say if you treat customers well, they'll come back. It's like it shouldn't be a thing. Unfortunately, it is. I know, but it shouldn't really be a thing. And that sentiment really helps.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, between both your comments there, CX is a feeling. We've got sweating the small stuff, and I think that more the point you said about sort of trying to measure it, quantify it was difficult, but you still invest in it anyway. And you can't. I don't know if you do have to report in any really specifically ROI-driven terms, or if it's just accepted that it's harder to measure, and you should pursue exactly what you've described you're pursuing. And
yeah, my advice on that would be to use the power of your customers' words as that ROI, I suppose. It is powerful for people. They will listen if customers are saying, I hate this. It's similar to, we use it, as I said, it ingests our tickets. We use it to feedback to our agents about how they made a customer feel, not about what the customer said about them, because it can get quite personal. We all know that if you work in customer service, customer experience. However, it is that feeling. And I think there was a really good example before about like customer interviews and things. It's fantastic. We did something similar at AO where we interviewed 5 customers, played it back to the whole contact center, because it means they see that scenario over and over again, an invoice not being delivered or a delivery being late and everything else. But the impact and the sentiment behind that and the feeling and emotion behind it is what really matters. Yeah. And people do listen. Like, my experience is that people do listen, even going into a business like FootAsylum that was very trade-led. You can sit in front of the CEO and go, this is what customers are actually saying. It's not a score. It's not a 7.5 could be an 8. Oh, that's all right. You go in, customers hate this. Yeah. Like, we've got to do something about it. So yeah, that would be my advice. I don't think you can't go to a battle with finance over the money that you're going to bring in most cases. It's really difficult.
Yeah, I love that. So we've gone from feedback to experience and the definitions that you've sort of shared there, and quantifying it and so on is a challenge, but it's an essential ingredient, and you can see the benefits in awareness and word of mouth growth and retention and so on. It's really, really powerful stuff. It sounds like you have to have a lot of passion. All 4 of you seem to have a huge amount of passion for it. I guess if one of you is absent in your company, then the examples don't keep getting brought up. Steve, have you found, again, over the long haul, because it's such a natural part of what HelloFresh originally set out to do by the sounds of it, and how you're doing it, do you have to maintain a level of like passion within the business to focus on this topic? Do you get challenged on the ROI question? Do you ever find yourself with a scenario where you've got strong insight that there could be a productive change, but it actually gets challenged maybe because of there isn't a tangible ROI? What's been your experience of these things?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely always a challenge. I mean, I think we're lucky in that we have our executives are investing in things that our customers are telling us they want through their feedback. That could be like more variety in the menus. That could be more specific delivery slots, or we're investing in things like we do a lot more of our own fleet delivery now for last mile, because we know customers have a better experience when we do that, and we make fewer mistakes than the average courier does. So there's all of that stuff. When you get into individual topics, it doesn't necessarily all pan out the way you would want it to. So you do have to stay on top of it. And so it's good that you mentioned fundamentals. I think that's the first part, is just having a good solid base to operate from, that's understanding your data and which teams you need to work with to make stuff happen. And we have lots of cases where, so for us, we're a central team. We work with a lot of the local teams in the individual markets. And we see cases where they just take the data and run with it. And we can say, like, that method looks great, keep it up. Let's see if we can teach it to the other markets. So we'll have examples like in Canada, they used some of the retention modeling that we do around customer feedback data to figure out how much they could invest into a physical component to go into our shipment to basically like have much better temperature performance, because that's something that matters for the quality of our ingredients, right? So they can kind of go beyond, you know, sort of the hard costs and incorporate some of the retention costs that we associate with certain feedback topics. So that's been really powerful for us. It doesn't necessarily mean that every topic is the case. I mean, there's certain ones that are, I think the ones I'm thinking of at the top of my head are sort of operational based, where you can go in with like a chart where you're like, I don't think, like, this chart is the most amazing chart ever. No one's gonna, once they see this, they're gonna be like, oh my God, I get it. Thank you for bringing this to me. You wanna come over for dinner, and that doesn't happen. And then you go back at it the second time, and then you try it from a different angle, and you bring in the retention values, and that just doesn't land. So we have to have like a good idea of where our opportunities are, which ones we can make progress on, but there tends always to be plenty of opportunities to work on to improve CX. Yeah.
Love that. Thank you, Steve. Abdul, I'm going to come to you in a minute with a question, just to put your mind on the futures, the crazy futures, all the ambitions and ideas you've got for AI for CX. Come back to you, Kat, hearing those ROI stories. Obviously, you've been trying to prove the case using highlighters. You're looking forward to hanging up your highlighters. Where do you think you'll get in terms of your, I guess, mission to try and find that tangible link to ROI? Do you think it's necessary for that next phase to find those tangible links? Do you already have ideas about what you want to do and how you want to shape that? You're probably already doing it just with highlighters.
I mean, I don't really use highlighters. I should just say I was being a bit glib, but not very. I think there's two things here, really. First of all, we do really have investment internally in this as a concept without proving a massive ROI. It is something that at a senior leadership level is wanted. I wouldn't like to, go into this too much, but board level bonuses are related to NPS, so maybe there is some incentive at that point. But in terms of the actual ROI, really, the biggest thing for me is that we have, I mean, probably many people have the same thing, but we have 3 different measurements that we look at each month very carefully. NPS being the first, customer satisfaction, and then the last one is future consideration. Probably with most as with most businesses, NPS is the most volatile. If they've just had a bad experience, the NPS falls off. Their satisfaction doesn't necessarily fall quite as far. They still, they still might be relatively satisfied with their overall lifetime experience with LeShuttle, and their future consideration is the one that is the last to take a hit. Now, without giving too much away, over the last few years, it's been very difficult, Brexit, COVID, etc., and our future consideration has really dropped. There's lots of reasons, some are our fault, some aren't, but future consideration has dropped. And what we need to do is work out at what point using the verbatims, the comments, and all of the other information in that survey, at what point does a low NPS score become a low future consideration score? So at what point are they saying, I won't travel with you again? And that's the bit where we can work on ROI. We can stop customers going away. If we can work, that's not the flexi barrier. That's something else that stop us saying, I'll never travel with you again. Yeah.
Thank you, Kat. I love that. Did anyone else, want to answer the ROI question? I think everyone's had a chance of covering that. I was going to, come back to you then, Abdul, just before we move to the audience for any remaining questions. Just in your wildest dreams, what do you think AI could do for CX in the future? Things that may seem possible yet or don't seem possible yet. It'd be a great way for everybody to be able to sort of maybe finish the conversation.
I'll keep it. This has been off though.
Yeah, it's just a prop. It's just a prop. It's 2. Hello? No, it's good.
There you go. I'll keep it somewhat realistic, because I think AI has already, even just within last 6 months, 12 months, has already, surpassed a lot of wild dreams for a lot of people. I forgot the name. What was the AI? What's it called? No, the one that Lyra. I was going to say Lycra. Glad to hear. So pre-Lyra coming in, what we used to do is take the Chattermill feedback, download it into a CSV file, chuck it into it would come in a CSV file, chuck it into ChatGPT and get a summary, right? And that was great until my team told me, oh, there's a limit. ChatGPT introduced a limit, so we couldn't get more. So then we had to pay for ChatGPT. But anyways, that's a long story. But that was slightly better than the process that you were going through, but it's still a very inefficient process. So the fact that you now have Lyra, Lyra. The fact that you, So the fact that you now do have Lyra makes that is. I mean, Dan, I know you've used this. It's seconds now, right? So efficiencies is number one when it comes to AI, because we had people doing that whole process and trying to get their summaries around that. The anomaly detection, I love the anomaly detection. It's in all my slides anytime I talk about CX, because that allows us to get ahead of the game, right? That's that proactive, reactive piece, right? Because it allows us to see where the trends are and really get ahead of the game, right? So that in itself is phenomenal. If we're now trying to push the boundaries a little bit, again, I think you mentioned it with Lyra. I think it was your question as well. Could we talk to Lyra? That I think will be a game changer. To be able to, it means I don't have to talk to my team. I can just ask Chattermill, why is this happening? Where's the trends, etc. I think that will be phenomenal. So if you take it from a efficiencies perspective and an insights and the intelligence piece, to be able to do that within seconds, I think, one of the things I always say about customer experience, good customer experience is speed, right? Customers got a problem, they want it yesterday, not today. The fact that if we can, within the realms of AI and Chattermill and the feedback tools that come with it, if we can operate at speed, I think that's a game changer already, massive game changer for us. There's several other tools that I use as well, when we're able to use some of the feedback from Chattermill, put it into sort of a heat map tools as well, and AI tools that are now in some of those tools are phenomenal as well, because all it does is reduces load. I once interviewed someone, and I might have to go find him again. He said to me, I'm a lazy developer. And I thought, well, I'm not going to hire you. And then wait till he finished, and he said, I just want things done for me. I just want like automation and efficiencies. And now in this world of AI, I totally understand. So I'm gonna have to go find him again, because I want to be lazy. I want that data and I want that information to come to me. You now have prototyping tools where you're able to chuck a prototype in there, and it, of course, it's not accurate. It's not based on real customer data, but it gives you an indication of where customers are going to drop off or where they're going to engage. Even if you're able to tweak it by 5-10% and then take it to real customers, you're having a conversation that's at least one step ahead of the conversation that you would have had. So efficiencies, intelligence, I think that's the space that AI can really help.
Love it. Thank you so much, Abdul, for that. And Steve and James and Kat, just even briefly, if you want to echo or add anything that you would hope that AI could deliver for CX that either is already on the cards or something beyond that.
Yeah, so definitely echo all of that. I think also what I'm looking for is the opportunity to kind of like make things more engaging for people who don't have CX metrics as part of their primary or secondary KPIs. I think, we traditionally consumed a lot of the Chattermill output in our internal system, so we would like re-ingest it and then report on it. And now a lot of the newer features mean that we're pushing a lot more people to use the platform directly, because there's a lot of power there that you can do real time and relatively, user friendly. And so getting that in front of people who, are worried about, line production efficiency or something, typically that's not the easiest conversation to have, to say like, can you please look at this CX data? Yeah. And the some of this stuff is now like, let's say, cool enough and real time enough that I think there's appetite for other teams who are not traditional users of this feedback to get interested and feel like it's not a big burden and feel like there's immediate opportunities in there.
That's awesome, Steve. Thank you so much for that. That's great. James?
I'm not a big tech person. That sounded really northern. I'm not a big tech person. Don't really get these computers. Anyway, yeah. But what I'm excited about is actually the sort of the law of diffusion of innovation, if you like, the laggards catching up and it becoming a bit more. You're not having to fight when you talk about AI, because you've got I've got people on our senior team that are like, it can do all of this, is going to be amazing, it can change our business. You've got others going, I just want a pen and paper. So it's the adoption of it for me, and I think with that comes things that would be more convenient for customers. I'm looking at it through sort of a customer lens. I want somebody to be able to use their assistant on their phone to order something off us, and it be accurate, and it talk to them like they're a human, and just do something really simple and easy, so I'm not taking 40 minutes out of my day to buy a pair of trainers and the next day worrying whether they're going to turn up and all of that. So that's my that's my thoughts on it.
I love that, James. That's great. Thank you so much. And Kat?
Well, I guess I'm not really qualified to talk too much into the future.
Oh,
I'm just at the moment trying to get to where you already are. But once I think the thing for me is really to use this tool to get to a more holistic view of the customer. As I've mentioned lots of times, the post-travel survey, the post-booking survey, that's really all I'm going on about at the moment. But what we want to get to is a point where we're also bringing in social sentiment, Trustpilot, Zendesk, customer relation, all of that information into one place, and really use it to get a holistic view of what the customer needs, rather than just, I sort of always say the same thing about this, really. What we find at the moment is what we're looking for, and we need to find other things.
Yeah. I love that, Kat. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go to the audience for questions, but I just want to say a huge thank you before we do. Kat, James, Steve, and Abdul, all your answers are incredibly unique and complementary, which is quite incredible because we gave you quite a broad topic. It would be easy to hear a lot of similarities, but actually so many differences in where you're coming from, and the ideas you've got in all those questions. So we've been really lucky to have all of you here. So thank you so much. Just want to make sure we give you a big round of applause before we go to the Q&A. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions? You can obviously ask them now. I think most of you will be around for a little bit afterwards. So if you don't have questions now, you can ask later. Yes, please. You've got a question. Brilliant. Great. Brilliant.
We treat it across the two different channels, and we've done a lot of work to encourage our teams to garner that feedback. We're not perfect at it. That is going to be part of the next 6 months of our business, is going to be about how do we capture that feedback. We've put a lot of ideas on the table, but fundamentally we want that verbatim feedback that Chattermill can then help us analyse, because we see the value in that, rather than the smiley faces or the feedback from store managers about fabricated customers they might have spoken to and all of that. We want them to be able to give us their feedback, for there to be a reason to give us their feedback, and that's usually around improving their in-store experience. We want people that didn't buy from us to tell us why they didn't buy from us, and all of that's in the survey. They can follow different paths, and Chattermill takes all that in, but it's really about that frontline person caring enough to drive those surveys. And like I say, we haven't been perfect at it by any stretch. I'm not going to say that I'd be worth spending any time talking about it, but that's our intention, and we have the tool. Once that intention becomes reality, we have the tool to make real progress, as we've seen from an e-commerce perspective.
So, building on what Mo just said, that will probably give you some more tangible execution that we've done. So as part of this transformation piece, it was, I mentioned this sort of earlier on, trying to bring different parts of the journey together. So we see it as one journey, right? So someone buys on store or in store, on the phones, online, and then you've got in our business, there's a lot of installation and engineers going out, and so it's online, offline throughout. So what we've been doing as part of our CX transformation is bringing in a concept of tribes, which is a fancy word for squads and stuff, but yeah, tribes is nice. And it brings different people from the organization that own different parts of that journey together. So now when we're talking, and we've started to introduce service design, which means that we're going beyond just the digital interface, and we're looking at end-to-end experience. So getting service designers to design that whole experience end-to-end, look exactly the whole conversation that you're talking about in terms of online, offline, and everything in between, even including, Royal Mail journey that's in between there, or the, how long does that letter that we push out, how long does that take to get out to a customer, and what are the different processes and steps there? I think that's fundamentally changing the way that we're looking at customer experience, because customer experience can very evidently get mistaken for just digital experience. And it's looking at all of those touch points in between. There's so much depth we can go into this, but I'm going to refer you to the gentleman at the back there. So Sam and Sean, Sean who is in one of the tribes, so he can talk to you a little bit more about how that experience goes. Sam, who actually looks after the whole CX piece. Grab those two gentlemen. I'm sure they can give you more and more details later on.
I don't know if this is a great answer, but we do. We have a lot of captive customers, which are our employees. So a large percentage of my colleagues get HelloFresh delivery on a weekly basis, or nearly weekly. So we just have sort of online communities at work, and people can say anything from why did you send this much chili pepper? This is way too much. No human can stand this much chili pepper. To this instruction in this recipe was a little confusing. So it's definitely hard to know what to do from the people you don't hear from, but we also have a decent sized captive audience that we can go back and forth with and get detailed feedback from, and it's actually been really helpful.
I mean, all I would say really is that from my point of view, we're very lucky that we have an office above the terminal building, so we have direct access to our customers, and we do use it. My team will go down and talk to customers. I'll go down and talk to customers. We do it especially during busy times, school holidays, May half term, all of those things. We go down and talk to customers, even if it's just about a small question. So really, what I'm going to say is thank you, because I'm just going to add that to the scope now.